We live in a time that's bending the arc of history towards equity and restorative justice. Social movements like Me Too and Believe Women are leading the way for better futures. I'm Jacob Henry Levitin, program coordinator of the Humanities Institute and senior global futures scholar at Arizona State University. And it's my pleasure today to be in conversation with Sally Kitch. Professor Kitch is University and Regents Professor of Women and Gender Studies in the School of Social Transformation, faculty affiliate of the School for the Future of Innovation Society, founding director of the Humanities Lab, distinguished Global Futures scientist in the Julianne Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory, and I'm delighted to say, founding director of my own institute as well. Professor Kitch, it's great to be with you.
Thank you.
More recently, Professor Kitch served as co-editor of Art, Activism, and Sexual Violence, just published by the University of Washington Press. I'm honored to speak with her about the book ahead of our event on April 4th, which will celebrate its publication. So, Professor Kitch, I wanted to start by asking you, what brought you to this work now?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but you may recall that President Barack Obama allocated some funding for universities to do something about sexual violence on campuses, which was and is still a big problem. And at ASU, that funding was received by President Crow, but he put together a small advisory committee. And at the time, the director of the ASU Museum, Gordon Knox, was on this committee. And Gordon said, it's a cultural problem. We need a cultural answer. And he said that art would be a mechanism for making change. So over the next 2 years, I served on an advisory board for this project, which was called Counteract. And it the group decided that they would put on 888 different performances or presentations, some sort of art experience to reflect the number of sexual assaults that take place in the United States every day. And over that 2 years, there was funding for student projects. The Humanities Lab was involved in that. And the advisory board was sort of monitoring this and learning from it and contributing ideas. And toward the end of the project, the board came up with the idea of having a book about Counteract. And so a volume was planned and created. I was not involved in the creation of it, although I submitted a chapter to it. And then one of the co-editors had a major health problem and had to drop out. And they were discouraged and decided they would drop the project. And I volunteered to work with the other co-editor, who's Dawn Gilpin, and to see what we could do to resurrect the project. I contacted my editor, who I've worked with 3 books before this, and she'd been at different presses each time, and she had just moved to the University of Washington Press. And it turned out that they very much wanted to do a sort of cultural analysis and art series of books. So what we wanted to do fit in very well, that art was going to be the basis of social change. And so, long story short, it was accepted. Dawn and I worked for a couple years getting the art together that we wanted, to deciding what the analysis would be around it. We have 24 contributors, including Dawn and myself. And so it's really very representative across a number of dimensions. And I'm very pleased with the way it turned out.
Wonderful. And I truly think it's an extraordinary book and a really decisive intervention in any number of ways. And one way in which I think it intervenes in important ways in the discourse is moving us towards a way of structural thinking and the way the arts act actually as an engine for structural solutions. So I'd really love to hear you talk a little bit more about how you see art as a prevention strategy, as you all put it in the book.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. And even though you are familiar with me and my career, one thing that isn't revealed in that material is my own involvement in the arts. I was at one time a painter, and I got to college, Cornell University, and I double majored in, well, I couldn't double major, but I had a heavy minor in art history, while I also did English and other things. And I am also an art collector in a small way. And one of my graduate degrees is in aesthetic theory. So I went into the philosophical ideas about aesthetics and their power and so on. So I really came to this project in the belief that art wasn't just therapy, that you just gave it to kids or teenagers or even adults who've had something traumatic. I do think that can be therapeutic for people. But I also know that looking at a piece of art, at a painting, experiencing a dance performance or a theater performance is transformational to the viewer, because people participate in art even though they're not called participants often. And it is transformational. And we have found out through these artists that we've included in the book, when we've heard about their own exhibitions and the ways that their art has been received, that their art, and it is graphic and it is tough to experience, but has made a difference, has brought people to a different awareness, switched the lens on the camera so that they see the world differently and they understand sexual violence differently through this art. And that's the kind of art we wanted to include in the book. And I think that that's been the success, that the artists that we've included and the analysis of the art really do help people experience the world in a different way.
Certainly agree with your sense of the book and the work it's going to do in the world. And to pick up on the vector of thought that you're bringing us to, the vector of thought that is aesthetic theory, which really, I think, delivers us squarely to the book's conceptual dimension. And for my part, I've always really felt that every theory needs an object. Every object needs a theory. And this book really has an extraordinary, dazzling array of both that become co-illuminating in really impactful ways.
Thank you. We're happy to hear that.
So I'd love to hear you say more about the philosophical touchstones that appear throughout the book and that have driven the project. And I think about the American gender theorist Judith Butler's work on protest, the right to appear, the French philosopher Jacques Rancière's work on visibility and politics, Jürgen Habermas's continuation of Frankfurt School's committed thought, which is how I came to aesthetic theory.
Yeah.
And even perhaps your own work as well.
Well, I am a rare scholar in one way in that I'm interdisciplinarily trained. My PhD is in a very distinctly interdisciplinary field. Now, a lot of scholars say, oh, I'm interdisciplinary. But I've actually been trained in different fields and ways of bringing them together. And so my theoretical concerns, and I consider myself a feminist theorist, that's really what I do. And I love your definition that every theory needs an object and every object needs a theory, because I think that really describes my work over many years, that I look at a lot of different objects, from utopian societies to literary works to social movements. I even went into Afghan culture through some involvement, political involvement. all the things that I've done, I've had to do a lot of work. I remember one of my books, I worked very hard to get familiar with Texas history because I needed to know something about a community that started in Belton, Texas. So I've had many different objects, but the theory that I've brought to it, putting together anthropological, symbolic anthropological theory, social history and theories of history, historiography, literary and cultural theory, is the idea that there is such a thing as gender ideology that structures culture and intersects with other ideologies, such as racial ideology, to determine how the shape of a culture and to determine how people are supposed to interact in that culture. And really, those sorts of ideas shape what people think is normal and natural. And so I'm always interested in unpacking the way those foundational theories, which can be invisible, which truly are invisible to many people. And sometimes this is an aside, but when I tell people that I'm in women and gender studies, it's sort of their answer is sort of like, oh, well, I'm a woman, or I'm a man. I know lots of women. My best friends are women. I know lots of black people, as if that's the same thing as really having a theoretical construct. So it feels normal that we live in a world that we divide by male and female, by white and black, by all kinds of other ways that we divide, by rich and poor. And yet those things are not at all natural. They're constructed, and we live by those constructions. And we construct nature along the way. We made nature be what we believe that it is. And so my work has always been probing how those ideologies work and how, as I do in this book, how social structures are actually built on those ideologies. And that's been a sort of a guiding light through everything that I've done. My interests are ranging, far-ranging. I'm now bringing the same perspective to the relationship between gender and race and sustainability. Also the environmental crises on the one hand, and ideas about remediation on the other. All of them are very deeply involved with gender ideology, especially, and stay tuned for this, for my next publication, masculinity. Cisgender masculinity is very important to constructing the sort of environmental crises that we're experiencing. That was a long-winded answer.
But everything contained in it, so important, so vital.
Thank you.
Professor Kitch, we're so grateful for you returning to the Institute to be with us, and we hope that you all will join us for Art Combating Sexual Violence, celebrating the publication of this critical book on April 4th at the Institute. Thank you.
Thank you.